20 Q&A questions with a drug addict. Alright, question 1. What is your name? My name is Jake McCollum. Question 2. Where were you born and raised? I was born and raised in Sherman, Texas. Here's a little Google Map thing. Question 3. What was your DOC? My DOC, my drug of choice, was crystal meth. Question 4. How long have you been using? I used off and on, mostly on, for 8 years. Question 5. How long have you stayed awake from meth? I have stayed up probably a week, but it's weird because you're not really thinking about that when you're using the drug. So like, I would sleep for like an hour and then wake back up, do it again, and I would go periods of like a month of just doing that. So in reality, I don't really actually know, but I would assume probably like way more than 48 hours of just straight up being awake. Question 6, what does it feel like? Well, meth gives you like this unhuman amount of dopamine when you take the drug, and so it made me feel like super happy. Like I was on top of the world, like I was the best version of myself. I could talk to people confidently. You know, it makes you last way longer in bed. That's one of the main uses for it, is sex-wise. It's like the sex drug. Question 7, what led up to my drug use? I think it had everything to do with 2 things. 1, mental illness, my depression, my anxiety, me feeling like I don't fit in with the rest of the world because I'm so introverted and whatnot. The second thing is I had it easily accessible. You know, one of my closest friends in the world had been using since he was a kid. He was in and out of my life, and you know, eventually came back around and he started using at the same time again. And I just so happened to be around the drug a lot, and so for me it was like, it became normal to see the drug and see how people actually reacted on it, and you know, not completely lose their minds at first. And I saw that and was like, this isn't, you know, what DARE says about hard drugs. Like, this isn't anything like that. And so it got to a point where I was like, you know, driving my friend around to get his drugs and everything, and eventually just one night I was like, you know what, let me just get a tiny hit of that. I ended up cleaning his whole room that night. Question 8, is my DOC popular where I live? Well, number 1, I live in Texas, and if someone just asked me that off the street and I had to come up with a quick like yes or no answer, I guess I would say yeah, I mean, we're right next to the Mexican border. I feel like that's where a lot of the meth is manufactured. Could be wrong, don't take my word for it, but I do find, and it could just be like just the people I know as well, but just to do a little extra research on this question, I found an article on greenhousetreatment.com, and it says meth in Texas, based on 2016-2017 surveys, it was estimated that in Texas, on average each year, over 120,000 people that are in the 12 years old and up age group used methamphetamine in the last year. This being 2020, whenever you're watching this. And in Texas, there were over 950 deaths involving methamphetamine that occurred in 2018. There were over 570 poison center calls related to methamphetamine that occurred in 2018 in Texas. They put so much in meth, you never know really what you're getting. Definitely, you know, it affects you in different ways from different batches. Question 9, how are my family and friends affected by my drug use? I personally feel like this isn't really a question for me, more so for them, but I would just assume for everybody's family and well, let me just say mine, okay? I feel like they were upset at first, obviously. My dad wanted to throw all my clothes out the house, was like, you're not welcome back in my home anymore. You know, my mom was just confused, you know, and my friends were like, just like, I guess, I don't know. I guess they were just like, oh, another friend that uses hard drugs, like that really sucks. We love and care about Jake, but he's doing his thing. It wasn't until a couple of years of using and you know, trying to get my crap together and really showing my parents that I wanted to be clean, but I couldn't get clean. And I had all these mental illnesses that were bringing me right back to the drug. It wasn't until then that my parents started to realize, oh, this is an actual disease that our son is going through. Same with my friends. They started to see things a little bit more clearly, you know, because I guess, like, for everybody, it's not easy getting to a point where you're like trying to come into a state of understanding for the drug addict. And you know, eventually they saw that I really was trying and doing all I could, and they started to, you know, ease back a little bit, be a little bit more calm about the situation, and they became more helpful. They got to a point where my dad was like, I need you to come stay here and be safe, because, you know, at one point I was roaming the streets. I was, you know, I would put myself in dangerous situations. Question 10, what were some of the negative effects of using meth? I would just want to die, pretty much. It would get to a point and where instead of using the drug for me to be more outgoing, be more friendly, it would get to a point where I would use so much that it would just completely drain my brain, and I would have nothing left, and I would end up being right back where I was before, mentally, you know, depression, anxiety, except it would be exponentially worse. It would be like so depressed I was ready to off myself depressed. And another one is like you're so sleep deprived because you don't sleep, you don't eat. I'm already skinny. I already weigh 125 pounds. When I was using, I probably weighed 75, 80 pounds. It just completely rots you out. And another thing is what the drug turns you into, because you're no longer yourself anymore. Like, what do you do when you run out of the drug? You have to find money to get more of the drug. Well, what if you don't have any money? You probably don't have a job, right? So you go and steal. You start doing things you wouldn't normally do, you know? And I think that's probably one of the hugest negative side effects of the drug, is like it turns you completely into someone that is no longer familiar. I was no longer Jake or Jacob. I was a demon. I was someone completely different. Question 11. How did I use the drug? I smoked it. You know, you have the pacifier, you know, the bowl, and you would spin it, and yeah, I would smoke meth. It wasn't until 6 or 7 years into my addiction that I started using a needle, and I was using the needle because I had a prescription for Ritalin when I was a kid for ADD, and later on I found out it was a stimulant, which is my thing. And I looked up on Google if you could shoot up Ritalin, and I found out how to do it. And then at the same time I was in rehab for meth, and so when I got out of my rehab the first time, I was like, well, maybe I can try and shoot up meth to see what it's like. I did. It was completely awful. And by the way, it's two completely different highs, smoking it and shooting it up. And you go out quicker when you're shooting up, for sure. Question 12, how would I spend most of my time while on the drug? In the beginning, like the first couple of years of using, I would be out in the streets, you know, doing the whole gang banging type thing with me and business partner, if that's what you want to call it. He would sell the drug, and I was just there to kind of be the taxi driver of the game, essentially, and help him make his runs. And it was kind of like a team thing, and so that's how I was kind of spending the first couple of years, until I realized that I didn't want to be in that type of situation anymore. And so I began to just use the drug and tried to live life normally, like hold the job, you know, hang out with friends that weren't using the drug. And it's a sex drug. I would, just to be completely honest, I would spend most of my time just jacking off in my bed. That's pretty much the extent of it. Question 13, have I ever been to a drug rehabilitation center? Yes, I've been to like 6. 3 were inpatient. By the way, I have a video for this on my YouTube channel. It's called What's Drug Rehab Like? But yeah, I've been through 3 inpatient, which is where you like actually live inside of the rehab. And then 3 outpatients. It's where it's essentially kind of like school. Like you wake up, you go there, you do groups, whatever that rehab has planned for the clients, and then you leave, and as if you're still living your normal life. Question 14, what was drug rehab like? My first experience and second experience were both through the same 45-day inpatient program. Yeah, this is going to sound funny, but it was some of the best times of my life. It's kind of like going to, depending on where you go, it's kind of like camp. Where, have y'all ever seen the movie Holes, where you're in a kind of a position, but you still make the most of it while you're there? That's essentially how rehab was. So you'd have a residence, and then you'd have the actual rehab facility. We would live at the residence, which was usually a big apartment complex where all of the clients would stay. You know, some people were out of their mind. Some people were just there to get off of a medication like fentanyl that they had been using for a long time. Some actually had a serious drug problem. So there's like a whole bunch of different type of people there. But yeah, no, we would wake up at the residence, and they would drive us in druggy buggies, like the vans, to the actual facility where we would hold groups. And you know, some of the groups were more focused on certain things like depression or your drug of choice, and we would do that during the day, kind of like going to school from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then once groups were done at the facility, we would go back to the residence, we would eat, do our thing, and we would go to a meeting, whether it was AA, NA, CMA, OA, whatever it might be. But yeah, for the most part, it was pretty crazy. You know, you're putting a whole bunch of addicts and people with mental illnesses all in one place. Something's bound to go wrong, you know what I'm saying? So there was definitely a lot of you know, restraint from everybody, and just trying to do the right thing. That's all you can do, is focus on yourself and your recovery. And yeah, that's essentially my experience with rehab. Okay, question 15, have I ever been to jail? No, by the grace of God, I've never been caught with anything. Question 16, what is one of the most frightening things that you've ever been through in your addiction? You know, my addiction navigated over here to Dallas, Texas, because there's just more connections, more people, bigger area, and that's where I was doing most of my business with my ex-best friend. And there was one night where we were at a safe house where he was living, and I just remember things were really sketchy. He had a friend over. They decide to like lay down, right? I decide to shoot up more than what I'm used to. And at the same time, prior to me shooting up and them laying down, they were using GHB. And I was unfamiliar with GHB. And they're like, you should try this. And they gave me a cap, like a bottle cap full of it to take. And I was like, I don't really want to. But I was curious at the same time. And so I was like, I'm not taking them with them knowing, but I'm still curious to know what it's like. And so I waited for them to lay down, and then I took some of the GHB, and then I shoot up, like I was just saying. And those combinations had me feeling some type of way already. And all of a sudden, the TV in the living room just randomly comes on. And it's like this weird telemarket, like sales pitch, but there was a series of different types of people, and they would all go into this weird spurt of them talking subliminally about doing illegal, harsh things. And it got to a point in my head where I was like, this is what I'm gonna end up doing if I continue using this drug. I started to lose my mind completely, and the TV screen kept going staticky. My friends like woke up like the next day. They wouldn't let me leave the house, which that was kind of sketching me out. That they wouldn't let me. I don't know if I was just tweaking, because I could have just walked out, but at the same time I felt enclosed, like something bad were gonna happen if I decided to leave. And they were treating me very poorly, telling me to do this, telling me to do that, as if I was just like a slave. Question 17, are you willing to share a drug story, like a war story of when you were in active addiction? We met a lot of other people that were in the game and selling, and we were trying to get more connections, me and my ex-best friend. There was one day where they needed a driver, and I had the car, so I decided to let them use my car. We were all driving, and we went to go pick up this huge amount of meth. And we went to this gas station, we met up, everything went well. At the same time, we were staying with this couple named Mama and Papi, which I'm pretty sure were Mexican cartel. Anyway, so me, the big guy, the little girl that was hoeing herself out, we went to go pick up the drugs, and then went back to Mama and Papi's house. And on the way back to the safe house, Mama and Papi's house, I was getting frustrated because the big dude was driving my car. So I was like, stop driving my car that way. That's strike one. He didn't think of anything. He just ignored me or whatever. You know, he starts to speed a little bit. I'm like, bro, that's strike two. We're almost to Mama and Papi's house, runs a stop sign, just keeps going. I'm like, dude, get out of my car. That's strike three. And he got pissed off at me, and we start kind of arguing a little bit. And we finally roll up to Mama and Papi's house. We get out of the car. We're screaming at each other. We're about to like start throwing hands or whatever. We're like pushing on each other. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 10 cars come around the corner of the house, all park in front of Mama and Papi's house. And everybody gets out of their cars at the same time. And they're all surrounding me and this big dude. And they're just watching us argue or whatever, and we end up taking the argument into Mama and Papi's house, where there's already a group of people in there, and they're just like either laughing or watching us argue. This big dude ends up pushing me down on the ground, and after that I was just like, you know what, screw it, let's just do what we gotta do, whatever. We all got back in the cars, and these 10 cars followed us to a different safe house, where this dude with like a ankle lock on his leg lived, and we used his bathroom as like a safe room. So like a line formed from the 10 cars in the backyard, and people would come into the house one at a time. They were all customers, and they would go to the bathroom, they'd test out our product, and then they would buy or whatever, they would leave. And they did that for all of these people that were waiting outside. And then after that, I ended up getting my car stolen from the big guy and my ex-best friend, and I ended up walking the streets for 3 days. Question 18. What have I learned having gone through addiction? I'd say one thing is never judge anyone. You have no idea what that person is going through. I've met some of the smartest people in the world that have been addicted to drugs. And it taught me humility. So for the longest time, I would think everyone was judging me going off of the deep end. But having gone through this addiction for 8 years, it actually ended up making me more confident. I actually got through getting off of one of the worst drugs in the whole entire world. I'm proud of myself, and anyone that judges me for that is And lastly, I'd have to say I learned how constructive an individual's mindset can become. Because at the end of the day, that's, I feel like what it really comes down to is the mindset. So it took some time, but I taught myself to only feed my mind with positive thoughts, and by getting through tough times, I would just eliminate the negative thoughts. This is kind of leading us into our next question. Question 19, how do I stay clean? First off, friends and being around like-minded people, I feel like is one of the most important things for myself. Always keep communication with one person, whether that means you're in a program and you have a sponsor. You need someone like an accountability buddy that helps you, stay accountable for yourself. When you're feeling down, you can call them anytime you need them. You need that person in your life. 2, some sort of program, whether that means you've created your own sort of method of going about doing things, or if it's literally like a program, like going through AA or NA. I feel like it's super important to get into something like that, so you've got like a list of things that you have to do like on a regular basis to keep you sober. For me, that's I go by the AA 12 steps, you know, and that's not for everybody, but that's what works for me. A huge one for me is staying busy and filling in your time slots with productive things. So for me, I took all of the energy I would put towards using drugs, and now I'm putting it into work. Like, I'm a delivery driver. I work like 80 hours a week because, you know, I mean, look at it this way, you know, if you're a drug addict watching this, you're spending like all of your time either using those drugs or trying to figure out how to get those drugs. Just use that same energy into something you're passionate about, or your work, or something like that. That's what I'm doing. That's why I have this YouTube channel. And the last thing for myself that helps me stay sober is helping others. So whether that means creating a video like this for people to get educated on or learn from, there's that. Or if it's just like a homeless dude walking the street that just needs someone to talk to, like, I'll talk to them. You know, or your friend is in trouble and he just needs someone to talk to your friend. Just helping out and reaching out to other people has honestly helped me stay sober. And last question, I'm at my designated Walmart because I live in my car. More on that in other videos if you want to check them out. But question 20, do I have any words of encouragement to anyone out there that is struggling or knows someone that's struggling? Let's start with, if you know someone that's struggling, or you're a parent and your son or daughter is struggling, don't get mad at them. Don't blow up their phone. Don't yell at them. Don't continuously ask them to just stop doing drugs. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. You can't just be like, it's easy, all you gotta do is stop. Like, it doesn't work like that. You know, for me, everyone's got a different bottom, okay? You know, for me, it was being out in the streets, not knowing where my next meal was gonna come from. It was me accepting that I was gonna die, and I pulled through that. And so can you, if you're the one that's struggling out there and you're just watching this video. It took me 8 years, you know? I never thought I would be where I'm at today. I know for me, while I was out there using, like, did I want to use? A part of me wants to say, like, absolutely not, no, like, why would I want to put myself through hell and deal with all these situations? But another part of me is like, I liked getting high. I liked using the drug. I liked the dopamine rush. I liked the sex in it. I liked how it felt. And so if I had a friend, I would just continue to keep up with them, ask them every once in a while how they're doing. If they need any help, I would try to get them help. It's not easy to get into rehabs. A lot of people are still out on the street waiting because there's a wait list for people to get into treatments, and it's, you know, it really sucks because there are tons of people out there that are struggling. Like, what can you do now? You know, it's like, yeah, they've got free programs you can go to, but like, I was one of those people that would go to a meeting and immediately use 30 minutes after. I get it, because for me, like, I just had to hit my own bottom, you know? I had to get to a point where I was tired. Mental illness is typically what keeps people continuing to use. Like I was saying earlier, it's like, I feel like it's all in the mindset. Once you kind of figure things out in your mindset, things get better. But until you do that, you're just gonna have those continuous reoccurring thoughts in your head that you're so used to, and you'll continue to use. You've got to branch out, I feel like, you know? Make friends, find accountability partners, find a program, set something up for your future to look forward to. Occupy your time with things you enjoy and are passionate about, you know? I'm Jake McCollum. I make videos on this channel once or twice a week. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It'll really help out, and by liking the video, this video will be pushed out for more people to see, and so I would be super grateful if you did that. And don't hesitate reaching out. Here's my social media right here. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. Yeah, I love y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope y'all took something out of it. I hope that I educated some people on things they didn't know. And yeah, so until next time.